Welcome to our deep dive into generosity. We're going to be talking about Chris Anderson's Infectious Generosity, a book that really kind of reframes how we think about giving.
Absolutely. It's not just about those tangible gifts anymore.
Right. It's about intangible things like ideas and, even just connections.
And especially with the internet today, I mean, the scale is just incredible.
Yeah. So let's unpack that a bit. The book starts out talking about how what we value as a society is changing, right?
Yeah.
We used to be all about just stuff, possessions.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But now it's more about experiences and information.
Exactly.
And it kind of makes you think, how you're spending your time online, connecting with people, engaging with content.
Learning skills.
It's all pointing to this shift in what we consider valuable.
Absolutely.
And, one of the things that Anderson really focuses on is this idea that this shift has big implications for how we think about generosity.
For sure.
And he brings up this amazing story about, what was his name? Martin Stewart, I think.
Yeah.
A wildlife sound recordist.
A fascinating story.
So he was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, wow.
And he decided to give away his life's work, all of it.
All of his recordings.
Thousands of hours of recordings.
Yeah.
Just give them away online for free.
That's incredible.
It's such a powerful story. But it also raises some questions like, what happens to things like copyright when someone gives their work away like that,
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
What's the impact going to be on, filmmaking and stuff, in industries that rely on these kinds of recordings?
I think it really forces us to kind of reconsider, ownership and legacy in this digital world that we live in.
Yeah.
He's basically ensuring that these sounds are going to be around forever for anyone to use.
And then it also gets you thinking about what kind of legacy you want to leave, your own personal legacy.
Yeah, totally.
And that leads into another point that Anderson brings up, which is that, in this hyper-connected world that we live in, everybody's watching.
Right.
Our reputations are constantly being shaped by, the internet and a global audience.
For better or worse.
Exactly.
It's a double-edged sword, for sure. Bad behavior gets amplified and, there can be serious consequences.
Oh, yeah.
But on the flip side, acts of generosity can spread like wildfire, too.
Yeah.
It's interesting, how our motivations play into all of this.
Mm-hmm.
How we perceive generosity based on not only the impact, but also what's motivating the person.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of motivations, Anderson delves into the psychology of generosity.
Yeah.
And this idea that we have these secret superpowers.
Secret superpowers.
Yeah, he calls them secret superpowers that drive us to be kind.
And
I found this part of the book so interesting because, he talks about this story of this guy in India named Mohammed who just instinctively saved this little girl from an oncoming train.
Wow.
And it shows that our brains, are wired for these things.
For empathy, for compassion.
Even towards complete strangers.
That's pretty powerful.
So you're saying, even our lizard brain, the part of our brain that's, responsible for basic survival.
Right. Fight or flight.
That can actually drive us to kindness.
Yeah, from an evolutionary perspective, it might seem counterintuitive.
Right.
But Anderson really argues that generosity is key to survival, especially, of groups.
So you mean it ultimately benefits individuals within those groups?
Yes, exactly.
So generosity, almost like a hidden advantage.
In a way, yeah. I never thought about it that way. And, that really leads into Anderson's whole argument about, this generosity mindset.
Yeah.
It's not just about being generous every once in a while, but making it an active choice, a part of your life every single day.
I like that, this generosity mindset.
Yeah.
It makes it feel like you have a choice.
You do. You have the power.
Yeah. Now, I think, when most people think about generosity, they think about money.
Yeah.
But Anderson really highlights these 6 different ways to give. And it's not about financial contributions. It's stuff that anybody can do.
I love that. What are some of the ways that he mentions?
Yeah, well, he talks about shifting attention, really seeing and listening to others.
Especially those who often feel invisible, right?
Exactly. And he gives the example of Joshua Coombs.
Oh, yeah, the hairdresser.
He gives haircuts to homeless people.
And shares their stories online.
Right, and it's such a simple act can create this sense of dignity and connection.
And challenges stereotypes, too.
Totally. So another way he talks about giving is bridging.
Bridging.
So this is about connecting with people that, you might disagree with.
Reaching across those divides.
Reaching across the aisle. He actually brings up this podcast that I'd never heard of before.
Oh, which one?
It's called Conversations with People Who Hate Me with Dylan Marin.
Interesting.
He actually talks to people that have trolled him online.
Wow. That takes guts.
Right. And it's so easy, we get caught up in our echo chambers online.
Yeah.
And it's easy to demonize people that have different views. But his approach is so interesting because it shows that there's potential for empathy, even in these really heated spaces online.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to just be online.
Right.
He gives an example of a chicken farmer who invited an animal rights activist to come film his farm.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Right. What happened?
Yeah, what happened?
So they ended up collaborating, which is so cool. And it kind of exposed the realities of factory farming.
And started a dialogue.
Right. And it's an example of how even when people have totally opposite viewpoints, they can actually find common ground.
And work together for change.
Exactly. So we've talked about shifting attention, bridging. The third way to give that Anderson talks about is sharing knowledge.
Sharing knowledge. Okay.
And think about it. The internet has completely revolutionized access to information.
Yeah.
And we have this incredible opportunity to share our skills and expertise with others.
For free.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
And of course, he uses the example of Sal Khan.
Oh, yeah.
The founder of Khan Academy. He started by just tutoring his cousin in math.
Oh, wow.
Recorded those sessions, put them online.
Wow.
And those videos, they evolved into this global free education platform.
I love Khan Academy. It's incredible.
It's being used by millions of people all over the world.
That's amazing.
It's a testament to collective action, what happens when we share knowledge.
Absolutely.
And Khan Academy is totally built on generosity of volunteers and donors.
It's a great example of how technology can kind of scale that generosity to a global level.
For sure. So the fourth way to give he talks about is making connections.
Making connections.
So using our networks to help others.
Oh, okay.
And he brings up the story of these two shoemakers from Pakistan, Wakas and Sidra.
Okay.
And they met this visitor from Germany, and she connected them with her network.
That's cool.
It led to mentorship, investment, and ultimately the success of their business.
Wow. Just from a single introduction.
It's amazing what can happen when we just connect with each other. It really highlights how we can all be connectors,
Yeah, absolutely.
So the fifth way to give that Anderson talks about is extending hospitality.
Hospitality. Okay.
So it's all about creating welcoming spaces and just fostering genuine human connection.
Yeah.
And it could be as simple as sharing a cup of tea with a neighbor or, hosting a dinner party.
Right.
He actually talks about his own experiences with hospitality when he was a kid living in Afghanistan.
Oh, wow.
Even small acts of kindness, like being invited into a stranger's home for tea had this lasting impact on him.
That's really cool.
It sounds like those experiences really shaped how he views generosity.
For sure, yeah. And I think it really points to how powerful hospitality can be.
Yeah.
It often gets overlooked as a form of generosity, but it's all about relationships and creating a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Strengthening communities.
Exactly. And then last but not least, the sixth way to give is creating enchantment.
Creating enchantment.
This one seems like it's particularly relevant for artists or anyone with a creative spirit.
Yeah, for sure. It's about bringing beauty and wonder and inspiration into the world.
And he shares the story of this artist, Lily.
Okay.
Who transforms these neglected urban spaces into these vibrant works of art.
Oh, I've seen some of her work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's beautiful.
How she can revitalize communities and foster hope through art.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a reminder that even small acts of creativity, even just, leaving a hand-drawn picture on a park bench can spread joy.
Yeah. So we've got these 6 amazing ways to give that go beyond money.
That's so cool.
It really makes you realize that generosity takes many forms.
It does. And all of these can really be amplified by the internet, too.
Yeah.
Extending our generosity beyond just the people that we interact with in person every day.
That's powerful. But of course, money also plays a role in generosity.
Right.
So how does Anderson kind of suggest we use our financial resources to really make the biggest impact?
He talks a lot about supporting organizations that are doing really innovative work to solve problems.
Okay.
And he specifically highlights, funding scientific research.
Okay.
Supporting social entrepreneurs and backing organizations that have really proven track records.
Do you give us some specific examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's this organization called Kickstart International. It's a charity that provides low-cost irrigation pumps to farmers in Africa.
Okay.
These pumps cost around $70 each, and they allow farmers to, grow way more crops.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it can significantly increase their income.
So a relatively small investment can make a huge difference.
Exactly. It creates that ripple effect, lifts whole communities out of poverty.
Yeah.
Another area he talks about is funding scientific research that could potentially solve like global challenges.
Okay.
So think like vaccines, clean energy technologies.
Mm-hmm.
These breakthroughs could change the world.
It's true. Research is so crucial for progress.
Absolutely. And he says we need to be more bold in supporting it, especially research that might be, considered too risky or unconventional for traditional funding sources.
So thinking outside the box.
Yeah, and taking chances.
And then there's the whole world of social entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
These are individuals that are using business principles to tackle social problems.
Right.
Can you think of an organization that supports these kinds of change makers?
Acumen is a good example. They're a global nonprofit that invests in social entrepreneurs
Okay.
that are tackling issues like poverty and healthcare in developing countries. And one of their big success stories is D-Light, a company that provides solar-powered lighting solutions to communities without access to electricity.
Wow.
And Acumen's initial investment helped them scale their operations, bringing clean, affordable energy to millions of people.
That's awesome. It's a win-win.
Yeah, for sure.
Addressing social problems and fostering economic growth.
Absolutely.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the internet.
Okay.
Because, it's kind of become this breeding ground for negativity and division.
Yeah.
But Anderson says it doesn't have to be this way.
It doesn't.
And it's something I think about a lot because it feels like, we're constantly being bombarded with negativity online.
Yeah.
So what can we actually do to, counteract that?
Well, part of the problem is that algorithms often prioritize content that evokes strong emotions, and negative emotions tend to spread faster than positive ones.
Yeah.
But Anderson believes that we can counteract this by bringing that generosity mindset to our online interactions.
So actively seeking out positive stories.
Yeah.
Engaging respectfully with people that have different views.
Absolutely.
And supporting platforms that are actually amplifying good.
Exactly. And it's also about being mindful of our own behaviors, sharing content that inspires and connects rather than just divides.
Yeah, it's we have this responsibility to create a more positive and generous online world.
We do. And this goes beyond just individuals, too. Anderson calls on social media companies to prioritize user well-being over engagement metrics that often just fuel that negativity.
Mm-hmm.
So, instead of optimizing for clicks, he's saying we should prioritize user satisfaction and encourage meaningful connections.
So what would that actually look like in practice?
Well, he even suggests ending anonymity on social media platforms,
Wow.
Arguing that accountability can lead to more responsible behavior.
That's a bold proposal.
It is. There's a lot to unpack there. But ultimately, creating the internet we want is a collective effort. Each of us needs to be more mindful of how we're interacting online and advocate for, a more constructive environment.
So we've talked about how generosity can be amplified by technology, how women use the internet to spread kindness.
Yeah.
But Anderson also delves into philanthropy.
Right.
So how does he challenge us to kind of think differently about giving?
He encourages us to think big, to move beyond these traditional models of philanthropy that focus on incremental improvements.
Okay.
And embrace a more audacious approach that supports really bold ideas that could create transformative change.
I like that.
Yeah.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah. And he introduces this concept of venture philanthropy, which basically applies venture capital principles to the nonprofit world.
So instead of just donating to charities, these venture philanthropists actually invest in organizations that are tackling these big social problems.
Yeah.
Providing funding, mentorship, support.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
They help those organizations scale their impact and achieve these breakthrough results.
It's like they're taking the best practices from the business world and applying them to the social sector.
Absolutely, yeah. And Anderson also encourages us to think globally when it comes to philanthropy. Even small donations can have a huge impact in developing countries.
Yeah, I've always been struck by how much further our money can go.
Right.
When you're supporting organizations in low-income countries.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the power of leverage. And he highlights organizations like the Against Malaria Foundation, which distributes insecticide-treated bed nets in Africa.
Okay.
And for just a few dollars, we can protect a child from this deadly disease.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Such a small investment can have such a big impact.
Yeah. And he also encourages supporting organizations working on global catastrophic risks.
Global catastrophic risk.
Yeah, like climate change, pandemics, and artificial intelligence safety.
Okay.
These are big, daunting challenges. But even small contributions can support research and advocacy to mitigate those risks.
It's about taking the long view.
Exactly. Yeah. We might not solve these problems overnight, but we can support the efforts that are laying the groundwork for a safer and more sustainable future.
So now, kind of shifting to a more personal level,
Okay.
Anderson asks this really thought-provoking question. Are you a net giver or a net taker in the world?
That's a good question.
It really makes you stop and think about how you're contributing to the well-being of others.
Yeah.
He really wants us to take stock of our lives
Yeah.
and ask ourselves how we're actually contributing to the world around us. It really challenges you to think about your impact. Are you giving more than you're taking?
Yeah, for sure.
So what are some practical ways that we can become more of those net givers?
Well, Anderson suggests, making a pledge to donate a percentage of your income or your net worth to causes that you care about.
Yeah.
It's a way to kind of formalize that commitment to generosity.
Makes it more tangible.
Exactly. Yeah. And creates a sense of accountability too.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a huge percentage, right?
Right.
Even a small amount, consistently,
Right.
can really add up over time.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about financial contribution.
No, not at all.
Right.
Anderson really emphasizes generosity with your time and energy too,
Yeah.
encouraging volunteering and mentoring, getting involved in your community.
There's so many ways to make a difference.
There really are.
Now, towards the end of the book, Anderson introduces this really ambitious idea
Okay.
that he thinks could be a game changer.
Oh, wow.
He calls it a global generosity pledge.
A global generosity pledge. Okay.
So it's basically this bold proposition where individuals would commit to donating a percentage of their income or net worth to effective charities.
Wow. Imagine if that actually caught on globally.
Right.
It would be incredible.
It could be totally transformative.
Yeah.
And he argues that, we already have the resources to solve a lot of the world's problems.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of mobilizing those resources.
And directing them effectively.
That's where this global generosity pledge comes in. It's really a call to action.
Yeah.
For people to kind of step up and be part of something bigger than themselves.
Be the change.
And he provides a framework for thinking about your personal pledge.
Oh, okay.
Encouraging you to consider factors like your income, your values, the impact you want to create.
I like that.
Yeah, it sounds like a really powerful way to put these ideas into practice.
Yeah.
But it can feel kind of overwhelming, trying to figure out which charities are the most effective.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so many out there.
That's why Anderson highlights organizations like GiveWell and the Like You Can Save.
Okay.
They provide in-depth research and recommendations on high-impact charities.
So there are resources out there.
There are, yeah, to help guide our giving.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into infectious generosity, what are some of the key takeaways that you hope listeners will kind of walk away with?
Well, Anderson's central message is that generosity isn't just a nice thing to do. It's really essential for a more just and equitable and fulfilling world.
Yeah.
He reminds us that we all have something to give no matter what our circumstances are.
Yeah.
Even those small acts of generosity can create a ripple effect far beyond our immediate circles.
And it's about recognizing the power of those small acts.
Exactly.
And consciously choosing to make generosity part of our daily lives.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that generosity is infectious.
It is.
When we give, we don't only make a difference in the lives of others, but we also enrich our own lives in really profound ways.
It's like that saying, the more you give, the more you get.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not about, expecting something in return.
Right.
It's about those intrinsic rewards,
Mm.
the connection, the joy, that sense of purpose.
For sure.
So as you reflect on these ideas from Infectious Generosity, ask yourself, what really resonated with you?
Yeah.
And what are you going to do to spread that generosity bug?
What will you do to be the change?
Keep an eye out for those everyday acts of kindness. And don't underestimate the impact that you can have by just choosing to join that ripple effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Remember, generosity is something that we all have the power to share.
And we hope that this deep dive has inspired you to think differently about generosity and its incredible potential for creating a better world.
Until next time, stay curious, stay generous, and keep diving deep.